Welcome back to Satisfactory. And between the episodes, I built this second building, which is now producing the rods. And I've cut off our main base from any sort of ingots from this whatsoever, because we're going to be bringing in the finished products. So I've got two the stackable conveyor poles here, and you can see it's got multiple levels. For the moment, I'm just going to use these multiple levels like this and connect this one over here. Hopefully connect it over here. There we go. Alright, so you can see I now have two stacked poles. Now, I'm sort of debating whether to actually use stacks like this to have different products on one line, or whether to actually have, you know, just plates on one set of stacks going upwards, and then just rods on another. At the end of the day, this isn't going to matter until we run out of space on belts, basically, when we need more belts, and then we've got more of an issue. But I'll have to rearrange it later. I think I'm just going to go with this for now. You can see over here we've got all this belt which needs to go, and we'll just replace that with pretty much a single sort of stackable approach. So let's just bring all of this down. And what we're also going to do is bring down these first two constructors that are over here. They've been replaced entirely by our stackable buildings now. So we can use, well, a lot nicer sort of setup over here to do exactly the same thing. When I say nicer, I just mean far more compact. So constructor can go away, and that looks a lot cleaner. Yeah, so we have two boxes, unfortunately, which have, yeah, lots of plates and lots of rods, and technically this is what our belts will be bringing in. Now, I don't necessarily need these boxes anymore because, well, we're gonna have stackable factories over there, so having boxes is sort of redundant a little bit. So instead, what I'm going to do is just reconstruct, because these will continue to make stuff. I'm going to leave them to actually just continue making stuff. I'm not going to touch them, they're just disconnected now. But from here on out, we can then do whatever this is. It's making reinforced iron? Is it reinforced iron? Yeah, reinforced iron. We can set this up again just over there, because we have our two products coming in. And I think, even though we've got stackable, I think I still want to have them with their own stack. I don't want to actually mix on the same stacks. It's going to cause me problems later if I do this. So I'm just going to rearrange it, I think, just to have two different belts here, and I don't want them in the same block space. Yeah, I'm going to have to rearrange that a little bit, but not very much. Just I need to move that one over. And for the moment, we can leave them at this sort of level rather than going one further up. And I'll reroute there. So I'm going to take those belts, I'm going to bring them into just something outside for now, and we're just going to be making screws with the pole line and nothing else, just to reproduce this so I can get rid of this entire setup once this is finished building stuff, that is. And we have, yeah, iron rods to screws, and it just needs a constructor, and it just needs an assembler to reproduce all of this. And of course there's a box behind the scenes. We can of course just set this up to make rotors instead, but that still needs screws. So either way we need screws. So let's just put for now outside a sort of production constructor, and let's put that down. We have room here to move, so let's just put it down here. Okay. And then this is going to be at the right height anyway. So let's just bring, and I've switched across to using conveyor belt stackables just as default really at this point. I would like to stay around about here. There we go. I'll rearrange it later to be a little bit more refined, but for now, that's fine. We can set screws. That will work. It just needs power, which of course we can get from here or something like that. For now, is that used up? No, it's not used up completely, but yeah. So we just need rods to go in, which they are, and it's going to produce screws, which we've got. And then the only other ingredient currently, if I use this recipe, is going to be plate. But over here we don't necessarily need that. What am I going to need? I'm going to need some modular frames, and looks like some rotors as well. So I'm going to make those off camera, and I'll bring you back in a second once I've reconstructed this. Okay, so this one is set up to make rotors rather than plates, and you see they're already starting to create them. It's definitely not the right balance because just the amount of resources coming in won't be right just yet, but this one is just basically consuming just rods, and then out of the other side, we're basically splitting here. Rods are going around, coming into the assembler, and screws are coming out this side. So we will need to rebalance that. Maybe we'll even have a building just for screws, in which case we'll need perhaps either part of the output of this is being split and some being sent out to the general factory and some being sent out for screws. In any case, I'm not going to do that just yet. I just have something that automatically is making rotors now, so that's good. And then what I want to do is just get this research up and done for jump pads. We'll be able to get up and down a lot faster once we have it. So I need a couple of things. One is some plates, another one is some rods. So that's simple. And I need some cables, which I will finish off manually. And with those done, shift click and we get the ability to get jump pads. Great. Okay, and what about the next one? Object scanner, I don't care about. Walkways, well, let's just see what does this actually need. This really doesn't need all that much that I don't already have, so I guess we could select that. Once that comes back, I'll need to then, put stuff in, but that's perfectly fine. We just have to wait for 3 minutes for that to be finished. Okay, so with that done, we then need to look at pretty much what's next, or our next sort of target is concerned. Okay, our next target is modular frames and motors. Okay, so modular frames, if you look down the very bottom right of the screen, needs basically a reinforced iron plate, and it needs rods, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so that should be straightforward for us to do next, and it's very useful for being able to build more of these machines as well, so that's fine. Motors needs a bit more work. It needs rotors and it needs stators, and stators we haven't made yet. They are going to be steel pipe and wire, and we haven't got steel yet. So, well, we can make steel, we just haven't done steel yet. Okay, so we have to think about that. I think what I'm going to do with steel is set up another, iron factory, but on top of another mining point. I forget the name for them. And have them convert directly into steel in the same building. So we'll have the miner on the bottom level, then we'll have the machines above it start converting that into iron ingots, and then basically above that we'll then have to deal with the steel. And for that we're going to need carbon sources, which is pretty much coal in this game, which means I think ideal for steel will be up there somewhere. Obviously we've got all of our coal production up there, so either we'll have to bring coal down or we'll have to bring steel down, either way. And if there is steel up there, then that would be, if there is iron up there, that would be an ideal way to just bring down the product and not everything else. So with that in mind, I will leave that till probably next up, maybe even next episode. Let's get started with the previous thing, which is reinforced, modular frames, I should say. So for that we need, here we go, we need this, we need our nice supply of rods, and we're going to need the reinforced iron. So we have reinforced iron already over here. You'll see this building is randomly out here just because I was looking at it. I didn't want to stop this production, and what we can do is just remove this now. Yep. Okay, so reinforced iron is coming out of there, and we have rods right here, so it seems like we can just chain another sort of assembler. If I don't need reinforced iron, that is. So if I do need that, I'm going to need to split things. So why don't I just temporarily get this set up so that I have room. Let me just make sure I'm aligned. There we go. Well, I'm off the edge of the foundation, clearly. There we go. I just want space in between them because I'm going to want to split things. And that's still not quite far enough away, but we are going to probably put a splitter up here. So let's just get a splitter in place. Logistics and a splitter. We can put it directly on this belt here. Again, what's going to be a little bit weird here is that we're splitting once off the line coming out, and then we're splitting again off that line. So yeah, this is a little odd, but The only thing I really want, please developers, let me snap to grid lines when I do this. I don't want it to be smooth, I want it to be snapped to grid lines. If that can be done, that would be a great improvement, I think, for the game. But that's just me being picky. So why don't we just bring this here like that, and then just bring rods this way. And we'll do the same over here. We should just be able to get it so that it lines up. And then hopefully so that it will curve around nicely. That'll do for now. I'll clean it up later. And now I just need to select a modular frame from you. And that's everything I need, I think. Other than obviously supplying enough stuff, which this should sort. Okay, so we are now backstuffed on each of these. Thankfully, the mergers and splitters in this game, as opposed to Factorio, they work pretty nicely. Well, even Factorio now works quite nicely, but you don't really need all that much work to actually configure these until you come to later and getting exact ratios. For now, it's fine just to drop them down and just keep them going like that. So they are providing this, and it looks like they're going at full speed, at least until they back stuff with the factory. Speaking of which, this should need a little bit of power. So why don't we just put a power pole in sort of here. And I'm just going to link it to over there. And then we'll remove that direct line. There we go. So that should all be connected and all be running. And it looks like it is. It's producing reinforced line. Just not fast enough yet. We'll need to do that later. But yeah, there we go. Modular frames is being produced. And that will stack up in there. I'm not going to put a box in place, but that will stack up in there until we're done. So at this point, we've got three separate lines going, well, sort of three sort of subcomponents here. We've got one set which is producing reinforced iron, and that is being done from products from our factory. At the moment, they're disconnected because, you know, I've got these boxes to actually consume. But again, we can get those from our main factory, both of the products. Straight into one constructor here to produce screws, and I'm tempted because we're also needing screws over here as well. Yeah, I'm tempted to have a screws factory. Still not sure about it, but I am very tempted. And it's somewhat similar to the Factorio thing of should you put certain products on the main bus or not, or should you just make them locally. Screws are such a high volume item that I think we should have. The problem with having them on the main bus is you're going to need lots of belts to actually produce them. But in any case, we're going to have the issue regardless. So, hey, may as well think about separate building for them. So while all of these start producing stuff for us, and what are you? You're producing rotors. I'm not going to terribly need rotors from here just yet, but at least we have them being produced for us in the background, which is the important point. So I think we're going to need to extend because I think we're going to need another building. I think we're going to basically have to build a screws building, and it's going to be built from the rods building. It has to be, or at least that's what we can do before we get to something thinking about, like, for example, if we had another iron spot, if I had a third iron spot, we could have a separate basically mining factory. And then the second building would be just basically screws. And you wouldn't see anything else going in except iron, and coming out would be screws. But that would need it would sort of need a loop back. I think we could do it. We could have, because they're the same machines. Instead of having one machine here produce, well, two machines here producing rods, what we do is have them flipped a little bit. That's an interesting idea. Except, do we have enough iron to do that? I wonder. What if, instead of pulling off the rods factory, I just pull off this iron line? Seems to be the right kind of approach, I think. So we're going to take one of these two. Doesn't really much matter which. I'm tempted to just align it with this left one. And that way, we'll make a building. We'll pull off the iron ingot line. And we'll do the same thing internally, except instead of having two in parallel like this, maybe we'll have each floor doing one thing in series. If, and I say if, let's just take a look if we can actually do this. Let's take a look at how it balances out. So if we look at production constructor, if we look at iron plates, we produce 15 a minute, okay? But what if we produce iron rods? That's 15 a minute as well. Okay, so what about screws? How many can you take in? You can take in 15 a minute. Good, so it's balanced. Good, 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 good. So what we're going to do basically is feed in iron ingots, put 2 of these constructors in the building, but instead of putting 2 in parallel, for each floor we put 2 in series, one doing iron to rods, the second one doing rod to screws, and then feeding that back to the output. That may need a bit of finagling, because I'm not sure if we have the room inside here to start doing that, because we also want it to be stackable, which means we need to have a pass-through for the iron ingots, just like this. We need to have a pass-through for the iron ingots, and we need to be able to take the components, bring them back down from upper floors, and have them all routed right. Because, for example, here, because they're in parallel, it's very simple. We just have 2 outputs. But now, if they're in series, I need to output from this one to the input of that one. Now, if I flip that around, that's fine, that works. But then its output is facing the input line of the first machine, which we'll need to actually do. So what I think we may need to do is just have a staggered output here. So instead of having them all on one level, what we could have is sort of you remember before we had elevators, you had the sort of staggered belt going on. Let me build the building and I'll show you what I mean. So here's the footprint of the building, 3x3, just like before. We have 2 constructors, but again, now I need to just change one to be the opposite way around. So let's just get the constructor and flip that around. And if we just line that up, that should line up pretty well. Okay, so our input line is coming in through one of these 2 holes, not quite sure which, because we may need to move a few of these things around. I'm almost tempted to try and get it to fit with this one. The main problem will be the splitters and mergers. They need to have enough space for me to put the belt through. Let's just get that. So I need to be able to connect that belt to that entrance. That's enough space. I can already tell that. Hopefully I'm right. Oh, come on. I know you have enough space. Oh, hang on. That's the output. That's why. Oops. Yeah. Yeah. I need it. Oh, stop eating. Honestly. I need to actually put it in this one because it needs to line up with only this output. So let's get the U sorted. There we go. Okay, so here is our input. And that one is going to go straight into here. Then it's going to come out the back. Okay, and we turn a corner. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing to here. Okay, so output to input. And this side, we need to basically feed the output. And the output's going to have to be either on the same side or on the opposite side, either way. Normally it would be back at, you know, that direction. But we can't really do that right now. So I think we've got to have it just coming in on this one side. We're going to have the output coming out right next to the input and having everything sorted out that way. So if I have a conveyor belt stackable here and then something like this, okay, then all we're going to really need here is some sort of merger after sort of our output comes in and whether it can actually fit in this block space. So if I get that there, can we line this? I don't think that's enough room. It really isn't enough room. Okay, so we're gonna have to do some fancy work here to try and get enough room, because I would normally put the merger here, but it just won't fit. Whoops, it needs to be the right way around. Okay, it just won't fit correctly, because if I put it here, there won't be enough room for this belt. Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to work. So either we're going to have to feed it back into this side, and then that's got some problems with this belt because it's going to come all the way through like that. We need some way of dealing with this problem. So I'm going to have a brief think about it and then show you hopefully a solution that works. And I have a stackable design. It's not the most symmetric, but it does work and nothing is glitching through each other. Yes. So let me show you. You have to basically sacrifice a little bit of the symmetry. You have to, instead of having them spaced out either side, you see what that stackable conveyor is? That's the center of the building. This one has to be over by one, i.e. right next to each other rather than with one block space. So we are going to need some kind of funky sort of power connector on the other side. And I don't want to actually do that badly. Let me just get this in here somewhere. I'm going to have to go in probably here. Here seems reasonable. And again, not symmetric. But it should get us to where we need. So if I just go outside for a second, let me just connect this up before I do anything else. So there it is. And we'll have it actually be correct outside. There we go. And connect that in. And then we'll connect it to the line over here. So that's all connected. These all should be powered up. Yes, they are. Good. So yes, input here, iron ingots, and screws will come out here. Input goes into the first machine, goes out of the first machine, past the second machine, which is now back in parallel configuration, around, back into the input, back into the second machine. At which point on the other side is just like before. We've got a merger with an input from upper floors going out to the screws. Hopefully that is all nice and straightforward. So in that way, around and into this machine, and then around that way out. And we end up with screws from iron ingots, which is much nicer than this sort of split approach, I think. I'd rather have just dedicated outputs coming out of buildings and then just balancing the inputs of the buildings, i.e. the amount of iron ingots going in. So at this point, we just need to split off some iron ingots. And that's ideal to do. I guess we could do it anywhere, really. We've not really got space in there after the lift, so I guess we're going to have to do it out here. And unlike before, I'm going to actually balance this with... this is going to be a splitter aligned to the grid. This is why it's so annoying. You can align these to the grid even elevated, but when you do that, you have to do it by placing another foundation block first, and then you can actually do this. So let's get that aligned. There we go. And here, I'm not sure where we're actually going to need this in future, so why don't we make it elevated? So yeah, let me just show you that. So if you want to make this elevated, you're going to have to place another foundation block first of all. So that's too tall. I think we're going to need a 2-meter foundation block. Foundation's 2 meter. And because those are already 4 meter. Oh, no, hang on. Yeah, that'll build. So let me just put it down here. Come on. Build. Lower down. Lower. Encroaching clearance. Well, let's do it this way then. Put it on that one. Then put the splitter merger down. Logistics splitter. This is almost like building in Fallout with some of the shenanigans you have to get up to. There we go. So there is right in the center. At which point it's elevated. So we can then, you know, thematically we can add supports for said elevated stuff, I suppose. If that is actually still in line, that is. Yeah. Or not. Is that the wrong way around? No, that's the right way around. Let me just try and connect directly. Yeah, connects directly. I'll tidy it up later. And there it goes. So that's the same as before, but now we're just going to set up another conveyor pole here, and that's going to just go around this building. So why don't we just set it to, I don't know, over here? Yep, seems reasonable, and we'll just do that into the input of this building, and we'll have a screw output. At this point, we can do the incredibly satisfying work of deleting this building, this entire splitter setup. No, you can all go away. Well, now I need to just reroute things, but other than that, we have basically screws going in here, so all of you can go away, at least for the moment, and we'll tidy up the rest later. So that screw's going to go away, and then on this side we're going to bring out the screw side of things, and we're going to bring it up and across over there into that building. So why don't we just put down, again, I'm just going to use like tier 1 sort of conveyor poles here, and will that connect properly? It will. And we'll just line that up for now. So if we have a... there come our first screws coming out of the factory. Okay, and we just have an elevated point here. And hopefully that's a right angle-ish. There we go. So that is our building setup. It's now going to be providing screws. This is still tier 1 belt, but I construct using tier 1 belt because, hey, it's very, 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 very cheap. The level 2 belt will become much cheaper once these machines start to really kick in. So we've now got 22 modular frames, and this building should be producing rotors. It is. So yeah, there's lots of stuff here to really gather. This is going to be the next sort of bottleneck. It needs screws as well. So we're going to probably want, what is this now? Screws and iron plates. So this is a really good time to think about where we put this again. It's going to be temporary again, but we no longer need the screw factories. And we no longer need iron plates because both of those are coming out of 2 of our buildings. So we have a screw building here, iron plate building here. Seems to be sort of nice that we should probably think about splitting them off, bringing them through here, and having a building again out here. I'm going to be encroaching on that space elevator again. I'll put it back down, but it's just going to need a bit of work. So why don't we just drop down a production assembler, and again we'll just leave it outdoors while we work on whatever buildings we want to in the future. We'll just have it outdoors out here. And then we'll split off, bring our products in from over here, and then we'll have a replacement for our original setup. At which point we need to then feed it into this machine, so we need to rearrange machines as before. Now look at that, all cleaned up, none of this previous infrastructure in place, and the only thing outside buildings right now is 3 of these assemblers. Now, of course, they'll need to be rebalanced in future, but for right now, this is looking much cleaner, much nicer. We've got one assembler right here. It's feeding in rods and screws. That's the one producing rotors. On this side, we've got screws and plates, and they're being producing into reinforced iron, which is coming out here and going straight in along with more rods to make modular frames. So all that is pretty nicely aligned, I think. I'm going to obviously build up this building. This one is perfectly, perfectly stackable, as are each of these that are inside buildings. The only one that isn't really stackable, I think, is, or at least it needs improvement, is one of these. They've got an L in them. I think it's the concrete one. It is the concrete one. So if anyone knows of any concrete stackable designs, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, or ideally within a 3x3. Otherwise, we can obviously improve that over time. But everything else now on the factory floor is looking pretty nice. We are going to need to deal with capacity issues of these belts, but as you can see here right now, if everything's not moving, then the output of these buildings is just fine. If they are moving, it helps if I actually connect to power, doesn't it? Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, they won't really move all that well. Let's just connect this power line up. Yeah, let's move you. And then connect another one up the back here. You've got 4 connecting to you. Why don't I just get one off this building? Yep, there's a power line right there. Connect up here and from here to there. Okay, that should start flowing. Yeah. So now I just need to monitor the lines really and just see if they're flowing at full speed. Then clearly I need, and if they're fully compact, then obviously I'm using up all of the product of these earlier buildings. If they stop moving, then I know I'm producing enough. That's the simple way around it. You can see, for example, the plate, I have more than enough plate. It's always going to be constrained by screws. So the screw factory, of course, we can stack now. And you can see our iron input is moving, and that's good. Back here, are you still moving? It's moving, but not very fast, which means that's good. The screw factory is not consuming all of our iron. It's still being constrained back here, which is good. So I don't need to improve this building to produce any more just yet until I improve the screw factory. So you can do that kind of balancing just to figure out how many you actually need. I think I'm going to have to move up to tier 2 belt with these, because already you can see that this belt is fully compact and flowing at full speed, and it's still not producing enough to basically keep everything happy. We want them to be backstuffed on belts where possible. Okay, so I think I'll leave that there for this episode. It seems like a good point to leave it, with just 3 of the assemblers outside of buildings. And we'll see you next episode. Probably some steel next episode, or indeed rebalancing of these 3 machines to produce the stuff that we want. Regardless, as always guys, thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to subscribe, click on the bell for notifications, and more importantly than all that, leave comments down below for your fellow players. Let them know some tips, tricks, and things you've learned in your game. Otherwise, we'll see you next episode. As always, thanks for watching.